Yes, yes, you're on base. Hey, this is Ron Carter. This is June 20, Wednesday, 2018. Hi, we're back. This is our third attempt to get this right, and some announcements before we jump into the questions, and hopefully have the answers. Last time we did this process, the results were really favorable, and some guys and ladies guessed right, but they were not the first person to guess right. We're going to try that again. I got another tune in my head, and I'll try to play that for you when we get near the end of the program. And the prize will be a lead sheet of mine, of my choice, that will go to the winner of this person who guessed first the name of this melody that belongs to the bass line, which I will pay you 2 choruses of later on. Having said 2 choruses, another event in my publishing career, I'm now publishing another version of my soft cover bio cover titled Finding the Right Notes, and we have another delivery of this issue. It's called the audiobook. And later on in the show, we'll talk about the audiobook, and I'll tell you what's there for you to hear and enjoy. The secret is that I'm doing the reading, and it's really a nice project. I think maybe it's time for some questions or so, and I hope I can have the answers for you. Here is the first one.
Ryan is asking whether you still have the electric bass that you played on Mike Longo's Teeth in the Night, and if so, what kind of bass is it?
I think it was called a Dan Electro, which is going really back in the early making days of electric basses. When I realized that there were really a lot of wonderful electric bass players already there, and what time it took to be able to match their quality and quantity of performance, I decided quickly that that wasn't what I could do. So I gave that bass to my son, Ron Jr., and I've been trying to find those notes on the upright since then. Nice fiddle, really lightweight strings with a very sound that was easy to produce, and it kind of got spoiled because the upright requires a little more effort than that does. I took my chances. I'm okay. Good choice.
Pat is asking, did you ever have any sessions with Tommy Tedesco in your travels?
No, I know who that is, and I have met several people like him along my way. But we have time, and if he's still around, I'm sure the bass gods will let us work it out.
Herbie said in an interview you were there when he first played with Miles.
Yes, Herbie's on. Is he watching this? The Herbie?
This is a question from David Lopez.
Okay, what's the question then?
It's more of a statement that
Okay.
you can maybe
Okay,
elaborate
no,
more.
go ahead. Okay.
So that was that Herbie said in an interview you were there when he first played with Miles.
Yes,
If
in
you
Miles's
recall.
basement, theoretically. His living room, it's a ground floor living room. Tony, Herbie, and I met over at Miles' house to play some songs of the Miles Davis library at that time. And evidently, the story goes that I heard years later that while Herbie and Tony were kind of getting familiar with the changes and agreeing on the melody and some detail, that Miles was downstairs or in his room listening to us rehearse. That was probably our first of 2 rehearsals in about 5 years with the band. 5 years and 3 days. With the band, we had 2 rehearsals. That was the first one. And I thought this was a call from the Herbie. If not, hi Herbie.
Mark is asking, can you briefly discuss how you work with studio engineers and producers to get your recorded sound?
Those guys are really interesting people, of course, because they know all this skill about microphones and ohms and aunts and uncles and stuff, and my knowledge at that level of talking to them is really minimal. So what I've tried to do is invite them out to the room where the recording's taking place and play them the sound that I have in that booth or in that room. I try to explain to them that this is the sound that I think is easy to record if they hear what's coming in there. I recommend 2 things to them. One, don't put an equalizer on on my sound. And if there's a bass solo, don't turn me up. My hands do all that work, and I trust my musical judgment as hearing this for a long time, what I think is a proper balance of playing time as an accompanist and when I'm more in front of the band as to my solo abilities, solo capacities, solo job at that moment. I kind of do it with my hands, and then I think that for them to turn up a knob that says bass up and bass down kind of destroys half of my job, and half of the pleasure I have from controlling the volume of the band by my chosen volume. Some guys have become offended, you know, they've got an attitude, say, well, man, I'm an engineer. Yeah, but I'm the only bass player here. And it kind of evens out, and those guys who appreciate hearing what the bass sounds like in that environment, no one thinks to ask them that. Well, I'm trying to be not the first guy to do that, but I want to take advantage of your ability to now hear what the bass sounds like and know what kind of sound I want you to be responsible for as I'm responsible for. It's a long answer, but kind of stuff happens. Thank you, by the way.
Tamaki Sanders says, I was blessed and amazed to hear you in Pharaoh Sanders' Karma. What was the experience?
Well, I worked with Sonny Rollins in the early 60s, and we worked with a trio at the place called the Flash Spot. It was Roy McCurdy, Sonny, and I. And this is the first time I heard a saxophone player play with such volume. I mean, Sonny Rollins, man, not only did he play great, he played great loudly. And the sound I got from Pharaoh was the same kind of just audio power. Just the sound of the sound that he got was so high and so loud that it kind of took my attention away from me trying to find the notes to help him sound reasonable. Ultimately, he got a little quieter, and I got a little braver, and we had a great time.
Peter is asking, what style of comping do you most enjoy when a piano guitar is comping you for a bass solo?
I trust that they will understand that they're to help me, and I trust that their judgment as to whose turn is it to help me makes that work worthwhile. I'm working with right now Russell Malone guitar and Donald Baker pianist, and they seem to understand what it takes to make my solos reasonable and musical, and they understand who's at that point in the tune, whose job it is to give me that I need. I trust their judgment as they trust me knowing when to stop. But I think they both share the responsibility of knowing, using their judgment, their experience, their talents to know at what point I want to have help from them or not have their help. That's part of their job. Thank you for the question.
James is asking that he has been thinking about putting a C extension on his bass. Can you discuss when you put one on yours and why?
Well, I was on looking at a bass shop's stuff down in Cincinnati, Ohio in around 1969. The shop owner, Dave Horine, has since left the concert. But in looking at the basses he had and talking to him about general bass, and I call me a scientist who plays the bass, he said he had this idea of adding an extension to the bass. Well, that wasn't a new idea. I mean, classical players have been doing that for years, you know. And he said, but he wanted to make the extension so you could finger it and not have so much weight to the instrument itself. So I said, well, Dave, I really don't know you, man, and I hate to have you come in and fool my bass on this idea that you think is going to work, you know. What are the ramifications of it if it doesn't work? She said, okay, well, if it doesn't work, I'll make the bass as near to the original position, near condition as I can. I said, okay. So I left the bass with him and came back a week later, 6 days later, and he had installed this extension neck, that extension fingerboard that was 9 inches longer, and he had cut out a slice of the scroll, and he saved that for me, and he installed this extension that allowed the bass to go from E with the clamp down to open C, that I would finger E flat, D, D flat, open C. I call it my Jesus string. In 1969, that was probably the first one that jazz bass players really had that access to, other than the guys like Trevor Jackson who used a 5-string bass. That's kind of seemed that idea now seems like it's been around for a while, and everyone, is those who use it appreciates it. Doesn't add too much weight to the bass because it's really just this way more. Then it's easy to stay in tune. All it requires is that you keep the fingerboard clear up there and clean it, keep it clean, and just practice where these notes without looking for where you think they are. It records really well, and I've done that with Joe Beam and some early stuff, and I found out that it's a very important note at the right time. Thank you.
Surgeon is asking how to play in two without losing the time.
I think if there's a secret, and there are no shortcuts, I think the important thing is to know how long is the rest. I mean, we can all play 1 and 3 and 1 and 3, but we have to figure out how much space do you want between the 1 and the 3. And the more you can control how much space the second and the fourth beat rest take up in that bar, the beats on 1 and 3 kind of speak for themselves.
Paolo is asking, what was your practice routine when you were learning?
Well, I'm still learning, I'm still practicing, so I'm not sure I have a question that goes, whose answer goes that far back. That's a pretty current and a pretty often situation I'm involved with. What I try to do to warm up, though, is to play a scale or part of an etude to kind of do what the trainers call loosen up the joints and stuff like that. I'm not a guy who does all this stuff. I don't think that works for me. And I try to go in looking to come out learning more. So I have a plan. I have books on my music stand there, and I pick an etude for the day. And I decide that I will leave this practice time, not until I've played this etude 4 times perfectly right. I figured out the fingering, the pitch, and all that stuff. And then when I feel I have it where it's playable, I will play it 4 or 5 times until I get it right. And if I get to time 3 or time 4 and it's not quite right, I'm back to number 1 again. I've kind of tried to maintain that discipline and goal-oriented practice time that when I finish, I say, I've done all I can do. I've learned these things that I didn't have before I started practice. Thank you, Mr. Bass, and thank you, the boss, and I put the bass down.
Sean is asking, who are your favorite contemporary musicians?
Contemporary, playing what kind of music? Oh, okay. Okay, when you get that detail, I'll answer for you. So you can't go home early.
Here is one interesting question from Eric. Where do you buy your ties?
If they would give me one free, I'd tell you where, but they're all from stores in Manhattan. This is a long question. I thought it was coming too. Okay.
What did you like most when playing with Tony Williams? Question from Carlos.
One of the things that I feel sorry that drummers of the day didn't see Tony play live was the detail and the insistence he had of making sure the drums were in tune. And he was very aware of how his pitch of the drums, all 4 of them, would affect my range of the bass. He was aware that the bass drum needed a certain pitch to match or not being away with my E string. He was aware of this floor time not being sharp or flat to my open A string. He was aware of the snare being really bright so it wouldn't be in the way of my G string. He was aware of this kind of details because we always talk about that stuff. I'll say, Tony, the bass drum sound is so long that it's kind of wiping out the length of my notes. Is there a way you can kind of deaden that bass drum? And he would say, well, I got a gun in my car. I said, Tony, please, just deaden the bass drum, not the bass drum player. So he was aware of that kind of detail, and those details made the bass, as I was trying to find the right notes, not concerned about being heard because the drums allowed my range of the bass to be available to me.
David is saying, I saw your quartet with Buster Williams. Can you talk a bit about the experience playing with another bassist?
Dave, how old are you, man? I mean, that was in 1975. Anyway, happy birthday, because you got one coming up soon. That was my first experience playing with a bass player full time. I had done some records with George Vivier and with Milt Hinton, and had Richard Davis. Had a great time playing with them. But this was a small group whose function was that the lead bass player, for lack of a better term, would play a bass that was pitched a fourth higher than the big bass, so that I have a range that was all to me, and Buster's range, in this case Buster, would not be interfered with my range, and vice versa. The difficult part was trying to have engineers at clubs understand that the bass sound of Buster's bass didn't need to be that deep to stay out of my register. And once those guys came out into the room and I could play for them live what they were listening to, they were less offended at my comments. They were, I'm sure, not very favorable when they came in. This is what you have to do with. I saw Buster the other week, and man, he's still playing well. He's got this big bass, man. I look at this bass and say, man, he's still playing that thing that good after all these years. And the answer is yes. Hi, Buster.
Drew is asking, what's your favorite tour?
From my kitchen to my living room.
Ed is asking, how do you use the bow when practicing?
How do I what?
How do you use the bow
Okay.
when practicing?
Long notes. And I still tell my students, get some decent rosin, make sure the bow has enough hair, and you haven't gotten the bow too tight, that the hair is stretched. And just practice a B-flat scale long tone, so that every note comes out measured. Every note is full, every note sounds like a bass.
And one more before we go to Guess the Bassline.
Okay.
From Paolo. He said you mentioned that you still practice etudes. What would you recommend as the best ones around?
Of what?
Best etudes around.
Best of what?
Etudes?
Etudes. Let me show you my books. Be back tomorrow. This is one of them. This is the second one. They're difficult. They have great harmony in them. They require patience, and they help me maintain the discipline that I have to have in my search for the right notes. Having said that, I'm going to see if I can find some for this bass line here that is worthy of a prize. And after I play it, I will tell you what the prize is. But the first person who gets it right. This doesn't count, I'm just tuning up. Stay. Okay, that's two choruses, and we'll see who gets the right answer first. And when you do, the gift will be one of my songs autographed and laminated. So.
We have comments.
Come on.
That's a tough one.
Yes.
Let's all not guess the piece, so he needs to play another one.
Okay.
And brilliant.
Thank you.
But no one has dared to guess yes.
Good. That's good. Well, you have to play it back and figure out those notes. One of the things that I try to have my students be responsible for is that when someone walks into a room when they're playing a standard, that within a certain amount of time, the listener, in this case me, has to figure out what tune that is within a certain number of choruses. And I realized that I'm asking you to make that kind of guess based on only 2 choruses. But I found 2 good notes yesterday, and I'm trying to put them to use right now. And we'll see if that helps you figure out what tune you just heard 2 choruses of. Okay? One more thing here. We have, again, I'm going to do this. I had mentioned earlier in the program that the next phase of my bio from the soft cover is now an audio book. And it looks, this is the cover of the audio book. This is the back of it. I'll have a full-blown ad after we cut this program off so you can take a look at it for real. 2 things that are very interesting about this project. One, there's 25 chapters, which surprised me. And each chapter has a 35 or 40-second musical lead-in of various groups I'm playing with. And I, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am the reader. I read all these words. They're correct. The diction is excellent. Kind of moving, you know. And the more you play it, the more the words stay the same. So take a listen on it when you get a moment. It's available now. You go to my site and there's a link. I just learned that word yesterday. A link that allows you to go to the site and purchase this new version of Ron Carter Finding the Right Notes. Well, it kind of finished it for today. It's another question?
We had some people asking for the second chance on guessing too.
Do we play again?
Yes.
Okay. Does it count? Okay.
You get a half.
They get half a prize. That still doesn't count. Okay. That's the first caller. No. Okay. That was Apple. They were guessing wrong. Okay, so that's the second chance, and we'll see who gets it close, who gets the answer and gets the prize.
We have some guesses.
Okay.
The way you look tonight.
No.
Tail feathers.
No.
That's all.
Okay, keep guessing. Tune into the site again and answer by way of the site your guesses, and again the winner gets this prize. Well, it's been an eventful day here in my small space. I'd like to, is the word shout out still happening? People still say, send a shout out to? Okay, to the gang of Matthew Garrison, who was here helping this project get started. They've come in and early in the morning, set the gear up. They didn't mess up my floor. They took off their shoes outside. They didn't bring any coffee. Man, to all you guys, absolutely. This is the second time, and they're getting better at it. Thank you, each and every one of you, individually and collectively. Thanks. I'll see you next time, sometime in July 12th or 13th. By that time, someone may have guessed it right. If not, I'll just keep looking at my site and see who got close. Thanks. See you again. Bye.